Hello and welcome to our podcast for college Catholics, where we discuss faith and spirituality from a Catholic perspective. I'm Father Patrick. In the trilogy of The Lord of the Rings, there's a very sad but important scene that explains the interior and exterior corruption of Gollum, a poor creature that is continually tortured by the greed for the One Ring and also tortured by the duplicity of his conscience. At one moment in the story, Gandalf, the wizard, explains how such a horrible creature as Gollum appeared in the scene, and why he continues to desperately pursue their one ring of power wherever he goes, with a plan of recovering it. Gollum had been a hobbit called Smeagol, and he was fishing one beautiful day on a peaceful lake with his cousin Deagle. Deagle caught a large fish, and he tried to hang on to his fishing pole, and was dragged into the water by this fish. While being dragged to the depths of the lake, he finally let go of the fishing pole, but he saw a shining ring on the bottom of the lake and took it. When he came out of the water, he started to admire and become fixated with the beauty of the ring. Smeagol, noticing that he had found something, came from behind Deagle and saw the ring and told Deagle to give it to him, because this was his birthday and he wanted it. When Deagle refused, they started fighting, and Smeagol choked Deagle to death. The movie does a great job at showing how immediately Smeagol disregarded the dead friend or cousin and immediately became fixated in the ring. He was aware of the evil he had done, because he went and buried the body somewhere so that nobody could find him. But as it usually happens with such evils, that murder did not disappear from his conscience. And that sin, together with his fixation in possessing the ring, explained his future interior torture and his struggles. Now, something similar happened in the scriptures with Cain and Abel. They were both brothers, sons of Adam and Eve. As Genesis chapter 4 explains, Abel became a shepherd and Cain a tiller of the ground. And both offered gifts to God from what they had produced. For reasons that are not explained, God accepted Abel's offerings, but was not so pleased with Cain's. And Cain was jealous and angry, and murdered Abel. After that, the Lord asked Cain where Abel was, and Cain answered as though he didn't know what had happened. But God then said, "What have you done? Your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground," as we read in Genesis chapter 4, verse 10. Which indicates how sin cannot always be hidden, and it can definitely not be hidden from God, who sees all things, and who will be the judge and our judge in the final day. Even our own conscience cannot be silenced, and will continue to rebuke us for the evil we have done, especially if we have committed some grave sin as that of murder. So this reality of our conscience might wrongly seem to some people something burdensome, created by our culture or the consensus of society, but in reality, our conscience is a guide that God has given us, a voice that reminds us to do good and avoid evil, and that we should repent from the past evils that we have done. Murder, or killing the innocent, is a grave sin. And this blood crying out to God from the ground is a powerful reminder that no innocent life will ever be taken without God being aware of it, and without God demanding an account for that death. In this episode, I will present an overview of the Fifth Commandment. And then we will go more in depth into the different topics within the obligations imposed by this commandment in future episodes. The key principle behind this Fifth Commandment of not killing the innocent is the fact that man, or each individual human being, is the result of a deliberate, free-willed, intentional, creative action of God. Not only did God create humanity at the beginning, but continues to create each human being when He creates and instills an immortal soul into the soon-to-be embryo at the moment of conception in the womb of the mother. It's not that God, quote-unquote, puts a soul into a human body, as if the human body existed before and the soul, maybe also existed before, were introduced into this body. No, it is not that way. When the sperm fertilizes the egg, God creates and instills a human soul, making that unity of spirit and matter a human being. The body then becomes a human body because the soul is a human soul. And it is the soul that gives its being to the body and makes it be this body, this human body, in the particular way that it is. That soul has intelligence and will, and therefore each human being is created in the image and likeness of God, as the book of Genesis reminds us. Besides, that human being, that human person, has a destiny, a goal, a purpose, which is to know and love God, to serve Him in this world and be united with Him forever in heaven. So it's an eternal goal, an eternal destiny. This is why that human being has a unique dignity, a unique value and sacredness that requires our respect, and we cannot destroy it at our will. As the Catechism says, human life is sacred because from its beginning it involves the creative action of God, and it remains forever in a special relationship with the Creator, who is its sole end. God alone is the Lord of life from its beginning until its end. No one can, under any circumstance, claim for himself the right directly to destroy an innocent human being. And this, here the Catechism is quoting the Dicastery for the Doctrine of the Faith and the instruction Donum Vitae, number 5. So there are different ways in which we can attempt against human life by killing innocent people, and also by attacking the reputation and the spiritual well-being of other people. Here I will mention, in a general way, what the Fifth Commandment encourages us to do and what it forbids us from doing. The first thing that we're encouraged to do is to recognize the sacredness of the life of every human being from conception until death. In this sense, we should learn to see in our neighbor people for whom Jesus Christ has died on the cross, people who have an immortal soul, and whom we should try in some way or other to bring to heaven, even if it is only through prayer and good example. Besides, families should learn to see children as a gift of God, and bringing children to the world as an amazing way of cooperating with God in the creation of the world, in the creation and preservation of humanity. Besides bringing them into the world, parents, and in an indirect way, the whole family of that person, have the responsibility of nurturing their children's personality and human formation. Now, as far as what is forbidden by this commandment, the first clear principle is that we must never kill an innocent person. And doing so is a grave or mortal sin. Now, this law of not killing the innocent people obliges each and everyone, everywhere, always, and under any circumstances. In the Sermon on the Mount, in Matthew chapters 5 through 7, the Lord adds to this prohibition of not killing the innocent that of unjust anger, hatred, and vengeance. Now, before entering into further detail of this commandment, I'd like to briefly explain what happens in the case of an unjust aggressor or self-defense, what we could say. For example, a just war, or if someone breaks into my house with weapons and is about to kill me. In this and similar cases where there is an unjust aggressor who intends to kill us us or a group of people under our responsibility, it is licit to defend ourselves, even to the point of killing the unjust aggressor. Now, this self-defense is not an exception to the rule that says you shall not kill the innocent. The Catechism says the following about our personal self-defense or the defense of a community or society that is under our responsibility. We read, "The legitimate self-defense of persons and societies is not an exception to the prohibition against the murder of the innocent that constitutes intentional killing. The act of self-defense can have a double effect: the preservation of one's own life and the killing of the aggressor. The first one is intended, the second one is not." And here the Catechism is quoting St. Thomas Aquinas in the Summa Theologica, the second part of the second part, or Secunda Secunde, question 64. Moreover, this legitimate self-defense against a lethal attacker is not only a right, but sometimes a grave duty for persons that are responsible for the lives of others, as we read in the Catechism, number 2265. Legitimate self-defense can be not only a right, but a grave duty for one who is responsible for the lives of others. The defense of the common good requires that an unjust aggressor be rendered unable to cause harm. For this reason, those who legitimately hold authority also have the right to use arms to repel aggressors against the civil community entrusted to their responsibility. Up to there, the Catechism, number 2265. Now, in this sense, the father or mother of a family have the duty to protect their children, and also the police or the armed forces and the civil authorities have the duty to protect the population from any external or internal aggressors. So, murder, that is the direct and intentional killing of an innocent person from conception until natural death, is still always gravely sinful. It is also sinful to indirectly but intentionally bring about the death of an innocent person, as was the case of David and his soldier Uriah. David had adulterous relations with Uriah's wife Bathsheba, and she conceived a son. So David wanted to hide his adultery by bringing about Uriah's death in battle, so he commanded the general of his army, Joab, to send Uriah and others to the most dangerous place in the battle and have his soldiers pull back so that Uriah would be killed. And that was an indirect murder. So God sent Nathan the prophet to reprimand David, and he said in 2 Samuel chapter 12, "You have killed Uriah with the sword. You have taken his wife to be your wife, and have killed him with the sword of the people of Ammon." So this was an indirect murder, but David was just as guilty as if he had killed Uriah himself. Another thing that is forbidden by the Fifth Commandment is direct and procured abortion. Abortion is always a grave sin, and it is most grievous, or more grievous, than simple murder, because of how defenseless the child is in the womb, and because the mother is precisely the one on whom the baby's life depends upon. This is why there are no circumstances whatsoever that can make a direct and intentional abortion acceptable or licit. It is always wrong. It is always a grave sin. This has been the teaching of the Church always since the first century. And it is such a grave sin that all those directly, intentionally, and formally involved in committing an abortion, that is, those without whose cooperation the abortion would not have taken place, incur in the canonical penalty of excommunication. That would include the mother, if she intentionally seeks an abortion, the doctor who performs it, the husband or boyfriend who pays for the abortion and maybe takes the wife or girlfriend to abortion clinic, and all those others whose actions or choices brought about the fulfillment of the abortion, including the legislators who knowingly and intentionally approve laws that encourage abortions. Another action that is forbidden by the Fifth Commandment is that of euthanasia, or putting an end to the life of people who are gravely sick, handicapped, or dying, whether they consent or not. Causing the death of another person, even if it's to eliminate suffering, is gravely sinful. We read in the Catechism, an act or omission which of itself or by intention causes death in order to eliminate suffering constitutes a murder gravely contrary to the dignity of the human person and to the respect due to the living God, his creator. Up to there, the Catechism, number 2277. Suicide is also always considered a grave matter, and therefore anyone who commits suicide knowingly and deliberately commits a grave sin. Of course, a person that commits suicide under circumstances that reduce their responsibility or deliberation, like, for example, severe depression or dementia, cannot be considered to have committed a mortal sin, even though the matter is still grave. Now, there's another area of concern under the Fifth Commandment, and that is the respect for the spiritual well-being and the reputation of those around us. The first thing is that we should have in mind that all of the human beings around us are created in the image and likeness of God and have an immortal soul, and we are meant not only to seek our own salvation, but even help others to the extent, of course, that we can, toward their salvation as well. So we have to positively engage in helping others through prayer, example, and good advice to get to heaven. We also have to defend the reputation of others, and we are forbidden to damage it by gossip or slander. We should also be more conscious about not being a scandal to others. And this of scandal is very serious because in today's world, apparently people don't worry too much about scandal. Scandal means to be an occasion of sin to others. That is, to be an incentive or an occasion, directly or indirectly, for others to fall into sin. There are many attitudes we might have, or words we can say, that we might think are okay for us to do, but they can be a reason that moves others to sin. So we can become a scandal to others. Scandal comes from a Greek word, skandalon, which means stumbling block. If we are intentionally, directly or indirectly, the cause or the occasion for the sin of another person, we are partially responsible for their sin. This participation in the sin of another can become sometimes grave. So it can become grave depending on the sin it leads to, but also depending on the authority of the person causing the scandal, and depending on the weakness of those scandalized, and also on the means used to lead others to sin. So as we read in the Catechism number 2286, scandal can be provoked by laws or institutions, by fashions or opinions. In that sense, you can be the cause of the sin of another person if you dress very immodestly, or dance immodestly, or speak impurely while trying to attract the impure looks or prompt the impure desires of another person. You can cause scandal if you invite friends to immoral shows or encourage impure or sinful behavior through social media, texts, bad example, posted videos, and so forth. Now, many people today argue that, quote unquote, others are free to do whatever they want. They are free to watch or not watch this or that other thing that I have produced. But the reality is that the content that some people put out there on social media or on the internet is the cause of many sins, and therefore a scandal. Now, there are many other things included in the Fifth Commandment, which we will continue to address in upcoming episodes more in detail, because obviously one episode is not enough to present everything. So that will be all for today. Thank you for listening, and please share this episode with your friends. Please also leave a review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. And now you can also find us on YouTube. So make sure you leave a comment or comments there as well. Hope to see you next time, and may God bless your day.